Lenin Ablat Gemara. Good morning. Today's daf is daf nun vav. We are up to towards the bottom of the page. We're learning about the carbon mincha. You're not allowed to turn it into chametz, except the exceptions are the shtei halechem from Shavuos, the 2 loaves of bread. Obviously, that's chametz, and the 40 chalas you bring with the carbon tail. The 10 of those are chametz. The rest you're not allowed to make chametz. You're not allowed to make the klaimet chametz. Because it says that's part of the chaymet. The chaymet, the part you scoop off, and so too the shiraim. Also, we learned in the pasuk, as the Shloki said, it says leisa alfa chametz chelkam. We put a kam after the word chelkam. Don't make it chametz. Make chametz even the chelkam, the chelik. And then the Mishnah said that every single step of the way, you get a lav. You get a lav for kneading it and turning it to chametz, and then you get a lav if you're working with mincha that's chametz, that's already consecrated. You get a lav for molding it, for preparing it, and you get a lav for the baking it. And each one is a distinct lav, and you'll get 3 different times lashes. And there's a 4th one the Gemara adds on that if you smooth it out and you if you put water on top to make it smooth, you also get malchus for that if you warn for each step of the way. Says the Gemara, we're up to 7 lines at the bottom of the 2 dots. The chayiv ali shosa. You chayiv for kneading it, va'al arichosa for molding it, va'al afiyosa for baking it. Omar Papa says Papa offer comes up. Papa says the chiddush. If you sounds like you just baked it, like actually you get shtayim, you get 2 malchus. Why 2? Achas al arichosa. 1 for molding it, va'achas ala fiyos, 1 for baking it. As Rashi explains, that the baking is the completion of the molding. Yeah. You already molded it before, but it can fall apart, or you can change it. Once you bake it, you can no longer change that mold. So it's like the gemar of the aricha. It's the end of, and I guess last minute also you make a few changes. Yeah, so it's the end of the afia, and then the baking. So you get 2 lavim. For the Gemara, what are you talking about? It says in the Mishnah, as we learned yesterday, we learned, how do you know that each one of them separately is considered a separate lav? Because the Torah, even though it says lesasa chametz, it also says lesa afa chametz. So we ask why you have to highlight baking when every activity is also to tell you, just like baking is a single activity in your chayiv, so to any other single activity chayiv. Now you tell me it's not a single activity; it's a double activity. But you said before yesterday that baking is a single activity. On its own. And now you tell me that it actually includes two malachas. It's Sayi Aricha setting up Malay Kasha. If he is the one who molded it and then he bakes it, so for him the aricha is already taken care of. You get your malchus, and the fee then is a distinct thing. You'll get malchus only for baking. If your friend did the aricha and then v'yoivle gave it to you, vafa you baked it, you now also did a little bit of an aricha, so you will get 2 malchus. So Papa's talking about your friend did the molding and you just did the baking, and here we're talking about you did everything. Taish doesn't like this part at all. Doesn't like it at all, and he says that no, we're talking about you actually did a little bit of an aricha, but in the case of your friend, he did everything, because otherwise the Gemara should have said that afiyah is gemar aricha. The way Rashi learns, every afiyah is gemar aricha. So if a Teisha learns that you actually did a little bit of molding, but if your friend did it all, then you did nothing, just the baking. Okay, says the Gemara, learned. So what we learned from here is that you could be mechametz after you mechametz, because once you made a chametz when you needed it, when you're now doing the next step, what are you adding? It's already chametz. So you just molded a chametz mincha, and the din is you still chayiv for what? From baking chametz. So let's ask chametz. So we see this mechametz acha mechametz. Once you made a chametz, you can still continue making more chametz. So we have the similar principle in other things. We learned there's a din you're not allowed to inflict. What happens is you give it to the kohen, and the kohen is flawless in those times. You brought it to the base of Mikdash. If there's a mum, then the kohen gets to keep it and he can eat it. But there's an avera for the kohen to go ahead and inflict a mum on the animal in order to benefit from it. So. And therefore, we will learn Gemara B'chaydes. You need an expert to come along to determine whether it's a mum and whether he did it. And a kohen who owns the animal shouldn't be the one who's making his own judgment. Obviously, he has a ulterior motive, so on and so forth. And that's where we learned that the Rav went and studied for 18 months to learn all the mumim. And then they didn't let him paskin because he was such an expert that nobody understood why he was such an expert. He was matter things, but people looked at it. Hey, it looks us. It was like bewildering. So they decided, he's too much of an expert. Maybe he's no good as well. Tell him I've learned. We'll see all that in Chaydes. So B'choy that had a seizure of blood, which is considered a mum in its own right, and it's life threatening. Makizin, I don't know what are these sicknesses today? Yochzudam, Hakozadam, blood circulation. Yeah, for blood circulation to make it better circulation.
Blood pressure, they did it a lot.
Yeah, so I don't know.
I mean, it's not really common these days.
Maybe we just take pills and that takes it lowers your blood pressure. We don't take all these leeches and all that. The choyesh achazay dam, you had a blood seizure. Makizin oisay es hadam. So you're allowed to bloodlet. Now l'chayda. Okay, we're just starting right now. Perfect. So Daf Nun Vav and Al will be left off yesterday, and we just learned a few lines where we said that each activity on its own, you get your own lashes if you knead or if you mold or if you bake. But then we said that Papa came along and said that baking includes also, you get two averas because you're also molding when you bake. And the way Rashi learns is when you're baking, you're setting a permanent form, because Kolzman, you didn't bake it, you can swap it over, you can change the mold. Once you bake it, that's it. So therefore, when you're baking, you're doing the whole thing. And you're sort of finishing, and maybe even you move a little bit around, you're molding a bit more. So, and Papa says you're getting two averis, so how's that work? And yet our Mishnah says it's only considered alone. We said yesterday, we learned it's only considered a single malacha. So we said, our Mishnah is talking about when your friend did the whole preparation, everything, and all you did was you put it in the oven. Then you did one avera. But if you're doing it yourself, then you're doing it. Then it's like, when your friend did the molding, everything else, and then you go ahead and you just put it in the oven. That's two avedas, because when you baked it, you set the mold in a permanent way. So you did two. When we say before that baking is only one, is where you did the whole aracha yourself. If you did the whole out of preparing them and the molding yourself, so then basically you're already getting punished for the molding. So therefore, when you did the baking, all you're now adding is a baking. You get only one. So now we're up to the bottom page. So what we glean from all this is that even though it became chametz already, if you make chametz further, but you need it was chametz, and now you go ahead and you mold it, you're going to get another aved, even though it's already chametz. And really, you think about it, what are you adding? It's chametz de kamincha. Yesh mechametz acha mechametz. It's like you're making a bit more chametz. So Tonaban, we learned the same thing by a b'choyer. A b'choyer, you're not allowed to inflict a mum. What about the b'choyer already has a mum? And the only way, or it's a mum itself, the only way to a seizure of blood, and the only way to help it out is by letting the blood. You have to make a mum. You got to puncture the animal. Now, not everywhere where you puncture it's a mum, but in the eye, in the ear, these places it's a mum. In other parts, it's not a mum. So the question is, once it already has one mum, can I just go ahead, randomly and make another mum? Who cares? Because there's no mum. Once it has a mum, or not. Says he wants to learn. We'll have a few different opinions. The opinion number one: you're not allowed to inflict a second mum. You're not allowed to go and puncture by the eye or by the ear, which will create a second mum. You're not allowed to do that because it's an averet to make a mum in a b'chor. B'chor is like kodesh. You cannot inflict a mum in a b'chor. Okay. And because it will in the rest of the body, it will heal itself anyway. It will recover, so no problem. The ein makizin as a dam b'mokum she'isabum, but you're not allowed to, for example, make a permanent puncture. Like in the eye and the ear, it's a permanent puncture that you cannot do. Leave it a miss. In other words, even though it already has a mum she'achazidam, you now make a second mum. No, it's similar to our Gemara here that even though it became chametz already when you needed it, you're not allowed to make a second mum. You're not allowed to go ahead and then continue molding the bread and make it sort of mocham. You're not allowed to do that. However, the Chachamim say yakis have been makom sheisrohum. Chachamim say once it has a mum, there's nothing wrong with making a second mum. No, it's different than our case over here where you're not allowed to do every step. There, once it has a mum, it has a mum. So you're allowed to. However, provided but when you are going to say that go ahead and geshech b'chor is no longer kodesh, you cannot rely on this new mum you make. This new mum you made, you did it by hand, and you're not allowed to make a mum. Even though we said in this case because it had a mum, that first mum is going to be healed. Because it had a mum, you're allowed to make a second mum, but don't rely on that because obviously then people are going to think you're allowed to make mum and mam b'chor. Can't do that. Yeah. Rab Shimon says, Nachmer, Rab Shimon says you're allowed to even on that very mum. Why are you allowed to even on that very? No, but you're allowed to rely now on this new mum that you made. That you're allowed to make a mum in the eye and the ear, and you can rely on that. Why? Because he says it's a dover she'ein miskaven. It must
You have
be.
no intention to make a mum. You
Yeah.
just want to heal the blood circulation.
And the issue is what about psik reisha? But let's assume there's no psik reisha. Tadav Hashem is kaven. That's one of the explanations the Gemara gives in other places for Rab Shimon. And other, yeah.
Makes a mum willingly wanting to make a mum. Most people, when you make a mum, it's an accident, no?
No, here you deliberately. Abel had a blood seizure. You need to now do bloodletting. So the Chachamim say lechatchila you can go do it now.
Your kavanah is not.
So Rabbanan say you're allowed to. Rav Shimon says he could even shecht on this mum. You did it. Rabbanan say you can't rely on this mum because you did it. Rav Shimon says no, nothing wrong with what you did because it's a davar she'ein miskaven. And because your whole purpose was not to shecht it, your whole purpose was so that you can heal the animal. If you made a mum in order to make the animal a b'choyer with a mum so that you can take it and keep it for yourself, that's a problem already. But this is davar she'ein miskaven, and therefore you're allowed to.
Other than some saying you can do it in a place that makes a move, only when you don't have a choice to do somewhere else, so it doesn't matter.
It does seem like it doesn't matter. You say you allowed to do that, but you cannot use that mum to eat from this b'choyer. So he said, he said you're allowed to. Then Yehuda says he's the other way. Afilu mace. Even if the animal is going to die, he holds that even if the animal is going to die, you're not allowed to be makis of blood. Why? Because he says that if you're going to make allowances, no, but he agrees with that you can only do it in a place where there's no movement. No, once it has a movement, doesn't give entitle you to make more movement, like a which is similar to our case of mincha. But he says, Rameya says you can make a mum in the rest of the body somewhere which will heal. I said no, because Metoich Odom Bol on the money, the guy is so nervous about his money that he can't think straight. And once you allow him to puncture, he'll puncture in the wrong places as well. And that's awesome. Says the Gemara, everyone agrees when it comes to Lachayda. Are we going to say they're also arguing in the case of Mincha because you made your chametz and now you're making it? Everyone agrees. Everyone agrees that if you're mechametz after you mecham by Mincha, in other words, you did every step of the way. You needed chametz and now you went ahead and you molded it. Of course, it's chametz. They chayiv. Why? It says chametz. It says you shouldn't make chametz, and then it says chametz. So because it says Leisa Avu Chametz, you already made it Chametz, and then it says don't make bake it, but it's already Chametz. What's the difference? Is a raya that even though you already made it Chametz, there's a new Issa called don't bake it. So there is Mechametz Achem Mechametz. Everyone agrees with Mesaris.
In the physical Metzias, actually being Mechametz, or by baking,
it's already Chametz.
That's what I'm saying. But by baking it, so you're building on that.
Exactly, you're building. Yeah, it just keeps on adding.
But it's not like a physical metzias that you can ferment it after it's already.
No, once it's baked, it arrests that process. The mesares acham mesares. You're not allowed to castrate an animal, even though the pasuk we had in Gemara Shabbos there. That kufi base. That even though you're not allowed to you're not allowed to. It says ba'artzchem doesn't mean only ba'artzchem. Anyway, you're not allowed to castrate an animal. It's forbidden. So we say b'mesares acha mesares that everyone agrees that even an ordinary animal that you're not allowed to castrate, if you continue the process of castrating every step of the way, even though you already castrated the animal technically, but if you add another layer, you'll get another lab. The mesares acha. How do I know that? See what it says umoch if it was squeezed or the kossos, it was crushed, the testicles of an animal. Or v'nosuk and ashil. V'nosuk means that you cut the testicles that's still inside the sack. The cutter says he pulled it out of the sack, right? So it's already detached. Might not, what are you adding here? So if you chayiv just for detaching the testicles, al noisig lekoshkein. Surely you chayiv. What's the tell you if you did only if you completely cut it off, you chayiv. It completely removed it. And lahavi noisig acha tell you that even though you already did the kodesh, but still sitting inside the sack, and then you pulled it out, it's another layer. The animal already is castrated. For that's when it's mesaras acha mesaras. Teishas agree that Rashi he learns that kodesh is still inside. Noisig means you cut a little bit of the veins there, and noisig means you completely cut it, but it's still sitting in the sack. So what's the machlekes? The machlekes here is only by b'choyer. This is an exceptional case because everyone agrees in other cases there is masada, there's mechametz. So how come over here by b'choyer there's an argument whether you're allowed to inflict a mum on the animal which already has a mum because l'chayr mishach the dam is already a mum. They're only arguing about matul mum b'bal mum. If you're permitted to inflict another mum, Rameir so and based on the pasuk. What's the pasuk? Rameir says it says in the pasuk that kol mum lo yiheh boy kol mum. Now, what any kind of mum? What kol's extra? Just say mum yiheh boy. What do you mean? What say kol? That means that even if it already has a mum, don't add another mum to it. That's what he learns. Okay, so that's why he says you're not allowed to add another mum. And the Rabbanan hold is another pasuk that says Tamim. In fact, the same pasuk. It says Tamim mil ratzon komum liyaboy. That Tamim mil ratzon. When is the nisr of komum? Only prior to that it was Tamim. It was a whole animal, and it was liratzon. You could have brought it away some English. Open the mum. Exactly. That's what they hold. Yeah, you can't add another mum. It's already no longer Tamim mil ratzon. Nu what I mean? Tamim mil ratzon. He says, you know, we learn from there. That's coming. If it was born a balmum, that's different. Then there's no Easter of placing a mum there. If it's born a balmum, it's a palm tree. In other words, it was never kodesh. It was never kodesh. What's the chiddush in your pasuk? If you have a carbon that had a mum, and the din is that you can redeem it, but there's still limitations. You shecht it, you're not allowed to share the wool, you're not allowed to sell it in an Italy's, that din, but you're not allowed to do. So therefore, I would have thought maybe also you're not allowed to add more movement to it. So after you redeemed it, I never thought, the Ari stood in place. The Giza, you're not allowed to share the wool, Avoid, you're not allowed to have a work for you. The woman ambulance. So maybe you're not allowed to inflict mumiman as well. There's still some kedusha there, kamashalon, that you are permitted. And that's what he says here. But Sameh says, a regular animal, you're not allowed to add any more mumim. I don't care how many mumim it has. You cannot add a regular animal of kodesh. But the chiddush is that over here, when it says here, Tommy Milratzon is talking about if it's already a psulim mikdashim, then there's no issue of adding more mumim. No, but Rabbanan Ameksiv Kol Mum Liyaboy, it says Kol Mum. It sounds like even already has mum, you're not allowed to add any more mum like I made. He needs that for another din altogether. Look at Tanya, we learned Kol Mum Liyaboy, ain't Liyaboy Shlo Yehei Boy Mum. That what? You should not be the one to inflict a mum. How do you know that I cannot be a grumma? I cannot be the cause that the animal, I'm a kohen. I want to be able to eat the kohen. There's no base in English anymore, or can go in the time of English. So I want the animal to have a mum. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to put the animal in a situation that is going to cause something else to make the animal mum. I can't even do that. Why? Because it says the chol. And what, for example, don't put some dough, a develo, right? Agabi eisen on the air. A dog will come along and eat it. Exactly, give a bite and make it a mum. I didn't do anything. I was just a grandma. I just attached a little piece of dough there, and the dog ate it. Kol mum. Says the thing. It says Omar. He says mum. Omar kol mum could have said mum. It says kol mum. So therefore, that's how the chacham. That's what they do. Omar Rabbi said. What happens? Hiniach sa'oir al gabe isa. Talking about a carbon mincha, and we're talking about groma and all that. So what happened? You place sourdough on top of a dough. The whole thing, you didn't do any kneading. You didn't do anything. You just put sourdough. And what will happen is naturally, it's not gonna ferment the whole thing, but a little bit's gonna be fermented. And you went and sat down. It happened on its own. The din is chayiv. You are chayiv just by placing it, even though the fermenting part itself, it's not like you needed it or you did something to make it happen. It happened by itself, but you initiate the whole process. Chayiv. And where do you find something similar? K'maisa Shabbos. What's the Maisa Shabbos? Well, Maisa Shabbos, you put something on the fire and it cooks your chayiv. But the example we're going to give is you put meat on the coal and now it cooks on its own. You're chayiv. So the same thing here. You put the sourdough on the thing. You're chayiv. If you put something on Shabbos, are you chayiv? But Amar Abba B'chol said, now remember by Shabbos we're talking about if you put meat on the coal and then it cooked it through and through and through, then you're chayiv. You basically you grilled on Shabbos. And over here, same thing. If you put this on the sourdough on the yeast and the sourdough does the fermenting, you made it into chametz. Says the Gemara, it's not so simple. If you place meat on coal on Shabbos, if you turned it over to make it cook on all sides, chayiv. Just sits there, you're potter. Now let's understand. So it sounds like you're just putting the sourdough on the yeast, you shouldn't be chayiv. You put the meat on the grill, you shouldn't be chayiv. Says Rabbi, let's analyze what Rabbi just said here. In the name of Rabbi Yechon. Amar Rabba, Ma yichayim nami dekamar. When he said that you're chayiv, he meant kemaisa tzli shel Shabbos. What he meant was that if it will turn it into ferment, just like maisa tzli, just like Shabbos, if you put it on, it grills the whole way through. You're chayiv. The same thing over here. If you put it on and it makes the whole thing with a chametz, you're chayiv. So let's Gufa. Let's analyze this din that we just said. Agufa Amar Rabbi says Amar Rabbi Chana Rabbi Yechon Hini Abazag Rabbi Cholam Heper Chayla Heper Potter. Hey, what is exactly talking about? Ilay Medelay Heper Bele Boshel. If he wouldn't have turned it over back and forth, it would have cooked. And pshit, of course, why would you be chayiv for putting it in? Nothing happened. So obviously you have to turn it over. No vase. And he delay Heper Nami Abi Boshel, and the Taka wouldn't have turned it over to cook anyway. Then why do you have to turn it over? Then I'm chayiv. I put it on the thing on Shabbos and it's cooking. Well, if I didn't turn it over, so what? Loy tzricha. We learn a chiddush. You know what we're talking about over here? The loy heper bov. He would not have turned it over. Havi boshil mitzad echad kemaichel ben dersoy. Remember, cooking a Shabbos is a kemaichel ben dersoy, because these people, the ganovim, they didn't have time to wait till it cooked all the way. They would eat it raw, a third cooked or halfway cooked, machlek Rashi and Rambam. But they would eat it when it's half raw or partially raw. And therefore, if it's only one side partially raw, even they wouldn't eat it. They would wait, make both sides partially raw, and so therefore it's not called cooking. So if he would not have turned it over, only one side of it, how would have been ma'achar ben dersoy, it's not called cooking. But when you turn it over, he's starting k'ma'achar ben dersoy. U'kamashlon, and the chiddush is the chol mitzadecha k'ma'achar ben dersoy. If you put something on the fire on Shabbos, it only cooks k'ma'achar ben dersoy, only one side, like klumu. Nobody eats that. Pella, if I remember correctly, this din is not brought down in Shin Yud Ches, where it talks about all the laws of cooking. It is not brought down. Anyway,
He's been to the side of tshuva.
He's such a schus.
The whole Shabbos is mentioned everywhere.
That's it. It's good in everybody. Look at Dasan Bavidim in the Torah. And yet the ask for him, let's say Dasan Bavidim, were special people. Amar Rava says Rava. The Now there's two versions of what the Rava said. Version number one. He said, but if, let's say, you only tzad but it wasn't ma'achar ben dersoy, it was much more than that. Nitzle boiker tzad echad b'makom echad, then you chayiv. If in one place it grilled, not k'ma'achar ben dersoy, but fully grilled, then you are chayiv. And it sounds like even if you did not turn it over, you are chayiv. So what's the chiddush of Rabbah? So if you cooked it all the way, part you have to cook the whole meat. You cook part and decide. We know the shear of Shabbos. We had in the Hamatzniya the shiurim of Shabbos, and by cooking has to be gregus. You cooked. What's the chiddush? So the Rashba says that the chiddush here is, as we'll see in the Gemara, that it has to be that gregus has to be in one spot. You can't combine half a gregus here and half a gregus there. Oh, all up. No, it has to be, and that's the chiddush. That even though you chayiv, only if it's one spot, as we see right now. Ravina argues. He's a that's in one spot. But now we learned Hakodeh kosher. If you go bore a hole on Shabbos, the slightest amount chayiv, you're chayiv. And we ask right away, what's the point of what did you achieve? Every malacha has to have an achievement here. It has to be something. One place kosher. What do you do with a tiny little speck, a little hole? The chiddush is we're talking about it. You did a tiny hole here, a tiny hole there, but if you do the aggregate, it becomes the size of a normal hole. The chazal tzid is the same thing over here. Why not? Why if you only have a third of a gregus here and a third here and a third, it should also be chayiv. So we're like, no, we're talking about in one place, the tiny little hole. Don't hide from there. The chazal, you know what? I can ask me, what's the suitable for? The tip of a key, the end of a key, which is a little point like a needle, fit into that hole, and that's where you store it. That's where you can turn the lock. So it has a purpose. No, so Rava argues that Ravina, he holds that it has to be Ma'akam Echad. And that's the Chiddush here. The Chiddush here is that if you put it on the grill and it grills fully, one side, it's still good enough. You're chayiv. However, there's another version. Another version is Amar Rava says, Afilu b'shnai the gimel mekaymes. And that's the Chiddush of Rava.
But spread out.
Not a full shear, but each part is part of the shear.
That's what I'm saying. So he's taking an average of
the aggregate. You accumulate whatever. So a quarter of a gregus here, a third here. If it got fully cooked, you chayiv. To a full shear. Although Ravashi, in this version, Ravina wants to support the Rava. We learned Hakader goes to Chayiv, make the tiniest borehole Yechayiv. Hechadam Ile Mokamech one place Koshul Machazi. What's the point? Allah B'Shnayim Lokaymis, and you combine the Chaz and Tzidif. The Ravashi has no right. Rava might be right because no right. There might be maybe you have to have everything in one place. You cannot accumulate the Chazul the Baba Daklida. Now why that at least it's suitable. The Baba Daklida. Pesha already asked. We already had the Gemara that that if you take out a half a gregris on Shabbos and then you take out another half a gregris, you're chayiv. So clearly that you can combine. What's a good discussion in the Gemara here? The Pesha there is very different. When it comes to carrying, all it's missing is bringing the two together. Here you have to cook to a pool on the whole thing. You can't just bring them together. There's a piece of meat in between. So therefore it's very different. They're separated. Let's just finish the sugya. We learned. Ilu nemar. If it would have said Asher takrivu Hashem, if the pasuk would have said any mincha that you bring to Hashem, don't make it chametz. Right? Takrivu Hashem sounds like it's only talking about the part that you bring to Hashem. The claim is the part that you scoop. Yesterday we learned that Shlaki said that even the shirayim, the part after you scoop it, you're not allowed to make a chametz either because it says loise of a chametz chelkam, that the chelik goes to kainim also you cannot bake. But now we're asking, what about before you did the kmitza? Just the flour itself, before you get to the stage of kmitza, you're allowed to turn that into chametz. How do you know you're not allowed to? All it says is Asher takrivu Hashem, or chelkam is after you did the kmitza. What about before the kmitza? I would have said only the kmitza. Mincha menayin. How do I know the entire mincha before you did the kmitza? Tamaleme, there it says mincha. It says kol ha-mincha, the mincha. It says the mincha. The mincha is before you did the kmitza, before you did the shrine. The mincha itself is already chayiv. In the way Achraim want to learn is that kmitza, there's two ways of understanding it. When you before the kmitza, there's no kmitza at all. Or the pshat, there's a kmitza already in there. You just don't know which one it is, what it is, so you actually scoop it out. And therefore, we're saying that if the kmitza is there already, and therefore it's asa. It's included in Takriv Hashem, but we'll soon see other things as well. I know every mincha the same thing applies. Kol mincha shetakriv Hashem. Any mincha you bring to Hashem, kol. Now what? Because this mincha is only mincha macheshes. How do I know that's a deep fried mincha? How do I know every other mincha with a veches, mincha soilis? I know all other minchas, the same thing applies. That even in the state of a mincha, you're not allowed to turn it into chametz because it says kol mincha. Says the Gemara, okay, ksheida, as long as the mincha is kosher and you make it into chametz, is the problem. The loy psula, but if the mincha already was puzzled, let's say whatever it is you did, it became tameh. Or we took it out of the base of Migdash before you didn't commit to anything else. So you made a puzzle, then there's no longer Easter of making it chametz because it's not kosher. If you make chametz a minchas kosher chayv, it's absolute potter. So boyra papa has a question. What happens chimtza? You did an aveda, you made a chametz. Remember, every stage of the way you chayv. And then after the first stage, you made it, let's say after the kmitza, you chametz, the yotzes. And then you took it outside, so you did the Easter of Yotzei, right? Sort of you made a puzzle. And then the chazer, and then you brought it back inside with kmitza. And the next stage, you made chametz again. What's it in this case? What's the shaila? Do we say even the yotzes ifsula when you took it out, you made a puzzle? And we just said that if you make chametz a puzzle mincha, it's no isa. So so therefore, if you now make a chametz, there's no problem. Or because you came puzzle. Or even perhaps here's different. Since it already became chametz first, so it was puzzle mitzat chametz. So when you took it yotzei, did you add any more psul to it? You couldn't anyway use a puzzle. So maybe yotzei doesn't. We imagine never happened because it's irrelevant. So if now the next day we learned out that mechametz acha mechametz, it says leisafa. So then you'll be chametz for the second chametz, even though there's a yaitz in between. Given the chimtza puzzle, yaitz lemahanabe. What did you achieve with the east of yaitz? Nothing. If the chihadam machmetz maybe mechaylo shemachach machmetz. Teiku, it is a question. One more question, still two dots. Mori asked the question. Chimtza bereishis mezbech. So you already makriv the kaimitz, but you didn't burn it yet. You brought it on top of the bech. Now remember, the pasuk says Asher takrivu Hashem. What does takrivu mean? You're just putting it on his bech. You already yitzak rava, or exactly has to be on the fire already. So what happened at that stage? You decided to make it chametz. Asher takrivu amarachmanu ba'akvi. You already did it. And remember, all the other psukim now too with the shirayim, but the kaimitz you did properly, it wasn't chametz yet, and now whatever happened, who cares? Your akrav is not considered akrav until you actually burn it. Teiku.
Don't we have a cloud that called Olam is back any good?
That's something else. That's once it's possible. Somehow you're even that Avera of being Muhammad. We get a lot. They warn you. Will you get Malchus? Because
Because it's on top of the Mizbeach, maybe it's already used done the Avodah.
Is it called Hakrava? Is Hakrava only when you put it, or you have to actually burn it?